All right, welcome everyone. I'm Ajda Snyder, Somerville Music Ambassador. Welcome to this event. It's presented as a collaboration between three entities. The Somerville Arts Council. Raise your hand if you're part of the Somerville Arts Council. Look behind you.
Right, thank you guys for coming.
The Art Stays Here Coalition. Shout out, raise your hand. And then myself as Somerville Music Ambassador. Hi. I got a name tag. I'd also like to let you know about a new music resources page on the Somerville Arts Council website. There's a QR code by the front. If you didn't see it already, hit it on your way out. It's got a list that I've compiled of Somerville recording studios, venues, retail and repair, and Metro Boston rehearsal spaces. Okay, a little bit about me and who I am and why this is happening today, okay? So look, basically, I've lived in Somerville since 2012. I'm a Berkeley alumna. My degree is in music business management, and I've been an active singer-songwriter, multi-instrumentalist, musician, performer, all that stuff for about the last 29 years in the greater Boston music scene. My role as Somerville Music Ambassador grew out of my work as a cultural ambassador during the creation of the City of Somerville's Cultural Capacity Plan, which is available on the Arts Council website. If you're not familiar with that, it's pretty cool and I definitely recommend checking it out. It was determined through that process that more support was needed to serve the arts ecosystem here in Somerville, and my mission is to support music specifically. Okay, I'm excited to present this workshop that focuses on creating a visual brand to suit your music. I don't know about you, but when I have a gig and I need a show flyer or I need new album artwork, it's a little bit of a headache because I am far more musically inclined than visually inclined. So even though I might have a concept, I still need the help of a graphic designer or visual artist to help translate and realize my vision and match it to fit all the specs for things like Bandcamp, CD Baby, DistroKid, social media, and all the places we digitally distribute our music, as well as if you're creating a tangible release, vinyl, cassettes, show posters, things like that. So today we have three panelists who are artists, musicians themselves, who can help illuminate some tips, tricks, and strategies on creating your visual brand. Liz Walshak, raise your hand. Andrew Wong, and Jeff Chakai. Before we hear from them, I would like to take a minute to mention the inspiration for this workshop and additional events we hope to present was born of two things. One was a series of events called Rock Shop that I attended between 2009 and 2016, brainchild of Steve Theo of Pirate Radio Promotion and Kevin Hoskins, former manager of the Middle East nightclub. It was a series that provided a lot of transparency in the rock scene, offering panels on topics like how to approach local bookers in the press, social media, and provided a vehicle for musicians to attend and learn about the protocol for these things, as well as enjoy some informal networking. I feel like it's been many years since there's been something like that, and now's a good time to renew discussion of these topics in our scene, especially since technology has changed so much with the introduction of AI, which brings me to the second note of inspiration. I'd like to give a shout out to Stephen LoVerme, of the band C, recording today for us on video, and Summer Glue Music Festival. It was with him and Aaron Jeanette. I had a conversation at a recent local festival about artwork and how some musicians are relying solely on AI to make their artwork for show flyers and how that's created a dynamic of its own. So again, we're here today to give you some ideas on how to create visual artwork that matches your sound. Things like fonts and design aesthetics say a lot about your music before people even hear it. So without further ado, I'd like to present our first panelist, Liz Walshak. Liz Walshak is a multidisciplinary designer, visual artist, musician, and educator. She's been an active musician and designer in the Boston music community since 2011, has played in several bands over the years, most recently Glacier, Sea, Vivid Bloom, has toured internationally and played Boston Calling in 2025. She designs merch, flyers, posters, and album artwork for bands and events. And then one last note, we're going to do Q&A at the end, okay? All right. Next is Liz. Thank you, Liz.
Thank you, Ajda, for that wonderful introduction. Let me go back to the beginning here. So I'm Liz Walshak, for those of you who don't know me, and as Ajda mentioned, I have been making visual design and music in the Boston community since 2011. So to give you a little bit of backstory, I moved to Boston in 2007 to attend the School of the Museum of Fine Arts Boston. I studied drawing and printmaking, and that's when I also really got into the heavy metal underground scene, and I started playing music in 2011, and people started asking me, like, you're an artist, can you make me a logo? Can you make me a t-shirt? So when I first started out, I was trained as a traditional artist, but just through needing to digitize my process and to kind of bring that into more of a graphic design realm, I ended up learning more design myself. And I've also been a public school art teacher for 14 years, teaching at Boston Latin School. And a few years back, my head of school asked me to pilot a graphic design program there. So through needing to teach graphic design, I learned a ton. And my goal for my presentation is to share a lot of technical information with you so that you can gain some skills and resources to make your own designs, or just kind of know how to get started if you're a musician and you need work created. So you may have seen some of my work around the music community, but maybe just didn't know it was mine. Most recently, some of the work I've been really proud of is the graphic design that I've done for Somerville, which you might be familiar with, but it's an annual heavy music festival run by Stephen here. And the thing that I really appreciate is just like the level of trust in creating the branding and aesthetic for this music festival, and just trying to create like a moment that draws people in and maybe references things that people like 1980s and 70s book covers and sci-fi and horror movies, so that we can kind of signal what it's about and nod to these different aesthetics, but still, have it be something kind of fresh and new. I also have designed a lot of merchandise for bands in the community, my own bands, friends' bands, and commission work for other people who I don't know personally. These are some of my flyer designs. So in my digital work, I really like to use a lot of texture and color and try to create like a moment that might draw people in. I also have experience prepping things for multi-layered screen printing and album design. So I just want to talk a little bit about my influences, because I grew up in the 90s watching MTV, looking at album covers, and this was a huge part of my visual aesthetic foundation. So I love to kind of like pay homage to the history of graphic design and music. And again, just have always appreciated the fact that if you're listening to a record and you dive into the album artwork and you're looking at the liner notes and you're noticing like, okay, how are they visually representing the music? I think it can really enhance a listener's experience. So my goal as a designer is to try to recreate that. In addition, I grew up as a goth punk kid, and I loved 70s aesthetics, goth punk music videos, weirdo animations that you would see in the 90s. David Carson is one of my favorite graphic designers. He was the artistic director for Ray Gun magazine and basically invented grunge typography. And Alphonse Mucha is one of my favorite visual artists. So in 2007, I discovered the sludge metal underground and John Baisley and Baroness. And John Baisley went to RISD. He's a phenomenal illustrator. And he basically started making these album covers that were a combination of heavy metal aesthetics and Art Nouveau, like Alphonse Mucha. And they just drew me in. And this kind of aesthetic became sort of like the iconography of the sludge metal subculture. And those record covers really spoke to me because they were artistic, they were unusual for the subject. You wouldn't expect this for heavy metal records, and they're just absolutely stunning and beautiful. So this was really my inspiration, like, oh, I wish someday I could just be that artist that makes album covers and kind of like creates an aesthetic for a whole subculture. I also want to point out another one of my favorite record cover artists, Orion Landau, who's the house designer for Relapse Records. And he is known, he said himself, he loves adding color to metal. And so that's another thing that I really like to consider is like, if you're flipping through the record bin, it can sometimes be really monotonous. And like we as designers or as musicians or artists, we're trying to signal like, how do we communicate what our music is about and maybe what our ethos is visually. So maybe we can find a way to innovate and be a little bit different as opposed to, I'm thinking of, not to throw anyone under the bus, but like, you know, black metal bands, if you're thumbing through the record section, it's like all monochrome, all evergreen forests with mists. And it can be like a little redundant. So how can we kind of like take the conventions, but do something unique with it? I also love 1960s rock art and Xerox punk rock flyers, and a lot of illustrators nowadays who are doing really intricate pen and ink drawings and turning them into iconography for bands. So that's kind of like my background, where I'm coming from. And so as part of my presentation, I want to focus on this guiding question, relating it to some of the issues that we're talking about with the advent of AI. Like, how do we promote our music as artists and as a community in a way that centers humanity and authenticity? So, talking a little bit about this problem with AI, it feels like this year in particular, we have been inundated with AI in every facet of our lives, and it sometimes feels like it's hard to opt out. And this has really grave consequences for our social relationships, the environment, the economy, and what does it mean for us as creatives? So AI, in my opinion, completely threatens our humanity and our livelihood as creatives, because it is, if people are using it for convenience, they are saying that they're okay with replacing humanity and the human hand in design and art and music. And some people, the counter argument is, well, AI doesn't have a soul. AI doesn't have humanity. AI can never replicate this. But again, it is integrated into our lives in this very convenient way, where if people are just like, oh my God, I'm not an artist and I need a flyer by next week and I don't want to spend any money, they might say like ChatGPT or Midjourney, make me a flyer, and then go with that. However, as a creative who spent my whole life studying this, I do have a sense of fear where if enough people do that, then it not only threatens the need for art, but also like what will be supported in many different avenues. And I just think of it this way, like imagine a future if every one of us decided, okay, we're just gonna make some quick flyers with AI. Then our whole community is infiltrated with just AI slop flyers, and like how dystopian would that be? So I feel like we as artists, musicians, and a collective community need to be on the same page in our resistance to this. And part of that is having wonderful events like this, where we can do skill shares and just band together so that hopefully, again, I hope you walk away with some skills and resources. So if you're thinking, oh, maybe I'll just use ChatGPT, I don't want to, but then you can think, okay, I have these free resources, maybe I'll take a stab at it. Maybe I'll sit down for 2 hours and just try to make something. So I think this is the start of a bigger conversation, but I do think we as a music community need to kind of band together against accepting and using AI in our promotional materials. And that's my perspective. But what that can look like is maybe if you're on a bill with with another band who made an AI flyer, maybe you say, oh, well, I have the skills, like I'll just whip up a flyer or something instead of using AI. Or maybe as a venue, you have something in your back pocket, like some pre-made art or a house designer, maybe somebody has the skills where you're like, okay, we don't really like to use that in our venues, so we have a backup plan. Just some suggestions. So next, I want to move into some concrete skills to give you tools that you can use to create a brand, a band brand, identity and visual aesthetic, how to make flyers, some best practices for reaching out to artists, and some thoughts about marketing your music as well. So when you're trying to come up with a brand for your band, this sort of mirrors my process. So I like to sit with the music and reflect on, what mood, emotions, lyrical themes, or other themes are you focusing on as an artist? Are there any colors that come to mind that match the mood? I like to make a mood board because I'm very much being a visual person. I like to make my thinking visible, and if I am communicating with my bandmates or with potential clients, sometimes it's easier to show than to explain verbally. So you make a mood board, and that can just be like a collection of photos. It could be a Pinterest board, Google Drive, even just on an email thread, just a collection of images that you can use. Notice the similarities in these images. Are there colors that you're drawn to, certain styles of typography? Are there textures or other things that you notice through lines? So then you can maybe start to articulate that. And if you don't have the visual vocabulary, that's where reaching out to someone in the community or visual artists can be really helpful, because those people can help you visually interpret. Also consider, what's the genre and what are some of the visual conventions within that genre, and again, that you can use or pay homage to, but then how can you also do something fresh with it so you stand out? If you're trying to make a flyer, you can decide to go the analog or digital route, and I am focusing a lot for the rest of this presentation on digital skills, but I always say where there's a will, there's a way. And you could always, take notes from the Xerox punk rock flyers of the 70s. It's like, all you need is 1 hour and a copy machine. Come to the library, cut up some pictures, do a collage, and there you go. There's your flyer. So just kind of breaking down, what are the necessary components of flyer design? And if you've already done this before, this might seem like obvious information, but I always like to give the from a distance test. So if you view something from across the room or you're walking by, is it going to catch your eye? If you're scrolling, is that going to catch your eye? Do you want to make people stop and engage with the design? So you want it to be eye-catching, easy to read. It's good to create a focal point, have some kind of image, color combination, or maybe an illustration or graphic in the center. And you want to include all of the important information, like the band names, the date, location, the price of the ticket, any age restriction. Is it all ages, 18 plus, 21 plus, door time, music time, and any other information that might be applicable. So one thing that I recommend is, so this is my personal preference, I don't love to get PNG logos from all the bands on the bill and then put mismatched logos on a flyer. That's just my personal preference. Instead, I like to choose typography that matches the aesthetic of the flyer and try to just make it work together. And you want to arrange the order of the band names in order that they will appear, ranging from first on the bottom to last on top. Think of it like opener on the bottom, headliner on top. And you want to create what's called hierarchy. So not in this sense where it's anything's better than the other, but it's just grouping things of importance and changing the size of them so that people can understand, if they're just looking at the flyer to know when to arrive at the show, even though you should always arrive early and stay late, that way they can kind of figure it out. And then, sometimes it helps just to come up with a layout if you're changing the sizing so that everything isn't all the same size, and you have your most important information, your secondary information, and then the details can be small. If people are gonna go, they'll look for the fine print. So at the end of this slideshow, I have a QR code, and I also have 10 paper handouts if people like a paper handout. So these are all free design resources that I found really helpful. And again, in the interest of just like showing you all the resources that I found along the way that are helpful, these are all clickable links, and with the QR code, you'll have access to this handout document that just has everything typed out in plain sight, and then these slides as well. So this will be a reference for you if you need it. So in terms of free design resources, I want to point out this is such a great, timely thing. So are you familiar with Canva? Okay, yeah. So Canva, I think a lot of people use it. It's like a great way to democratize design. They recently bought out Affinity Studio, which is a competitor to Adobe. So if you know, like Adobe Photoshop and Illustrator has had a stronghold on the graphic design industry for decades. And their programs are expensive, so they're behind a subscription paywall, and they're not the most intuitive. It can be really challenging to learn some of these programs. So Affinity Studio, so I'm just gonna hop over here real quick. So it's free. Canva bought this out and just this past week released it. And this is basically professional grade design software that takes all of the most commonly used tools in Photoshop, Illustrator, and InDesign and put it into one program. So I highly recommend exploring this as an option to get you started because this is a game changer. And the idea, Affinity, they want to basically, like, again, democratize design software and sort of undercut Adobe as the industry standard, which I fully support because I do use Adobe, but I have to pay, for a monthly subscription fee. And I understand that if you're not making that money back as an artist, that can be like just an obstacle. It's a way of kind of gatekeeping design. So definitely check out Affinity. And then I also posted some design resources, like design theory, because it's one thing to know software, but sometimes you don't know where to get started with like color psychology and what fonts to choose. So there are some resources there. There are some YouTube videos of like my favorite techniques. So check them out. So let's say you're like, okay, I just can't take this on, or my flyers aren't where I want them to be. So I want to hire an artist. So let's talk about just some best practices. So first you want to research the artist, find someone whose work you like. And one thing that I get pretty commonly is that people will message me and just kind of assume because I am a multi-faceted artist, like, you're an artist, can you do this? And it's a style that's not really in my wheelhouse. And it depends on each individual like inquiry, but sometimes I'm like, well, that would take a lot of like background learning and trial and error. So definitely find someone whose work is like in the wheelhouse. And then you want to create that mood board. And here's an example of a mood board. So this is just one that I made on Pinterest, and you can upload your own pictures if you have like an archive of things that you like. And the thing I like about this, again, is it makes your thinking visible. And then you can see, once everything's next to each other, you can start to see some through lines. Like if I was looking at this, I might notice, okay, I love the paper cutouts around the text. I love the high contrast graphics. I love some of the textures. It's like grungy halftones. So then you start to gain like a visual vocabulary that you can then explain to the artist. Then you want to determine what your design needs are. So what type of formats are you releasing this? Are you doing a cassette tape, vinyl record, digital Bandcamp release? So what are the assets that you need? Because that's going to determine the scope of the project for the designer. And then when you're ready with all this information, reach out. So I just gave you a list, like in case it's hard to conceptualize, like a list of things that might be useful for kind of formulating your formats that you need. And then when you reach out, this is, again, my personal preference. I get a lot of inquiries that are like, hi, we want an album cover. What are your rates? And I find that question really difficult to answer right out of the gate because every project has a different scope. And if you're looking for me to just Photoshop a quick composite that will just be on Bandcamp as a digital album cover, that's going to be a lot faster than a full release package because you're printing a vinyl record and you want the matching t-shirt and you want a new logo to match that design. So it really depends on the scope of the project. So it's really helpful to have that up front. And even though it might seem like you want to just get the interest thumbs up, like, hey, are you available and are you down for this? Then, it would be helpful to know more info up front. So I recommend just saying like a description of the project, what formats you need, the date of release. Always give more time than you think because these things take a long time, especially if you're doing a full physical release of something. If you have label support, you need to be communicating with your label and figuring out where the vinyl records are getting printed, what are the templates for that production company, are there any specific logos or assets that need to be added to the design in addition to just the base artwork. And then if the designer has something that you like, include a picture of their previous work. Like, I really like what you did with this. Could we do something in that vein? So this kind of brings you into just my personal process. So usually I consult with the artist and I'll sometimes schedule a Zoom call just so we can have like a back and forth. It's like, what are some things you like? What are some things you don't like? What are you trying to convey? What's the concept behind this? It's a lot easier to have a verbal conversation than go back and forth via email trying to describe things sometimes. And then the research process is very similar to the process for branding, where I try to immerse myself in the visual culture that the band already has established to kind of understand where they're coming from, listen to their music, figure out like what kind of themes they're working with lyrically, what are some colors that would work, and then I'll interpret the aesthetics based on what they provide for me and also like what I gather from their music. And there's always going to be this feedback loop where it's like, so I'm envisioning this. What do you think of this? Is this going in the right direction? Then there's the whole design process and completion. So for me, I try to keep it as like this very feedback-oriented process where you make a little progress and say like, how's this going? How's this feeling? All right, so in terms of marketing your music, you have designed things yourself or you had the artist design them for you. Now you want to put them out there. So this is a really personal approach that's going to vary from band to band. So what I suggest is to find something that feels authentic to you and your goals. Like if it crushes your soul to post a reel on Instagram that's like, hi guys, come to the show on Friday night, then don't do it. You don't have to. I think most importantly is to just be a part of the community, go to shows, reach out to other bands, be supportive. That's the top thing. And I always say, like, don't expect people to show your band a certain energy or attention that you're not willing to reciprocate yourself. That I think is really important. Bandcamp right now seems to be the best platform for fans to directly support the artists. And I know that they're not completely unproblematic, but if anyone has any alternatives, then I think that's worth talking about as well. But so far, Bandcamp has been the best. I would say use social media strategically. I feel like we're now going into this transition phase where like people are boycotting Spotify, and Spotify for a while was determining like who would get booked at these bigger shows, maybe because they're looking at how many Spotify plays you have per month. But I feel like hopefully that's about to change. Also, with what's happening politically and with AI, we know that Instagram is where people find out about shows the most nowadays, but it is also this algorithm economy that is really tricky. So I think that's a personal approach that you have to kind of figure out like what you're comfortable doing with and how much you want to play the game. And then I just always say, remember that your worth as an artist is not defined by likes and streaming plays, because that, at the end of the day, like, what does that amount to? So I always like to think of creative ways to reach more of an audience, like outside of the metaverse and without paying for ads. So maybe that's reaching out to local college radio stations and national college radio, local music journalists who are happy to support. I found that growing an audience on Bands in Town and Songkick was actually pretty useful. When I was in Vivid Bloom, I kind of focused on that for each show, and I watched it grow just through making sure I posted every single event we were on, because I think there's a demand for people who want to learn about shows outside of Instagram. So if we can come up with a platform or really like use those platforms that already exist, I think that's really important. Old school methods, which Stephen is the best at, old school flyering, posting to forums, listservs, posting to Reddit, just any way to get the word out aside from some of these social media platforms. And then another thing that works really well is building incentives for people to attend shows, like making it a special kind of event or always having a special merch item, maybe like a limited edition thing or something unique about the event and also maybe not playing too often, because there is always so much going on that people don't always want to go see your band like 3 times a month or something. So in terms of essential marketing assets, so just some basics. Have some really great promo photos. And this is something that I didn't realize at first because I just had some photographers take pictures, but I wasn't thinking about the format and how it would look in context on these different platforms. So it's really good practice to have one in a square format where everyone in the band is visible so that it works for the profile picture square format. And then the rectangular format that will work on like a YouTube banner or Facebook or Spotify, where every band member is visible. So that's something to consider while you're doing a photo shoot. And, have a cohesive aesthetic, wear cool outfits that all look good together. For logos, it's important to have a transparent background PNG of your logo. So have one in black and white, so that way it's easy to send out to bookers and whoever else needs it. And then you also want to get together your like complete package that you can send to people like for a press release. So you want to write a short band bio. Who are you? What's your story? What's the narrative you want to share to journalists and bookers that explains the story about your band and what your ethos is? All right, so here's a QR code. If you would like all of this information and these slides, you could scan the QR code. If you would like a paper handout, I'm happy to share these. Raise your hand if anyone wants a paper copy. Okay. And this is a question that I think is another conversation for another time, but what if we created some sort of platform as a music community where we can share our flyers and our events outside of these social media platforms? Like if we had a listserv or a forum or something like that, I think that would be just a useful thing to have. Okay, thank you so much for your attention, and we'll do questions at the end, so thank you so much.
Editor's note: there is a collectively owned alternative to Bandcamp in development called Subvert. At this time, artists can sign up as members and test the alpha platform.
All right, thank you so much, Liz. That was amazing. My mind is blown, and I feel like I have a lot of work to do because I'm hoping to put out a new record next year. I got to get on this stuff. Okay. All right, up next we have Andrew Wong. Andrew fronts the Boston-based noise rock trio Miracle Blood. The band has released 2 full-length records, toured the country, and has been featured in Decibel and New Noise magazines, In addition to guitars and vocal duties, he creates many of the visuals for the band's flyers, album covers, t-shirts, and music videos.
All right, thanks for being here. All right, thank you for being here. This is me. I'm Andrew Wong. As you heard, I play Miracle Blood. I do most of the graphic design for it. And I'm also a sixth grade teacher, so I will be a little bit annoying during this and make you do some stuff that because sixth graders, they have short attention spans, and we're all kind of like that now. So I'm going to be presenting and also kind of asking just a little bit of you as well. So just about my background, at age 11 is when I got my first guitar and started playing music. At 12, I forced my friends to be in a band with me. And then at 15, my sister's friend gave me a cracked version of Photoshop, which is why I'm here today teaching you. And I want to be the person here who really convinces you, if you're on the fence about, I don't know if I can do this, that yes, you absolutely can create the art for your musical project. I play in Miracle Blood. We've been a band for about 11 years now in different forms. My past bands were the Kakas, Houseboat Supreme, Alston Pants, and Forever Blind. Here's what some of my visual work looks like. These are some covers I've made for Miracle Blood. The one on the right, this is actually just turning 1 year old today. It was the day that it was released. These are some flyers that I've made over the last few years. I also do designs for our band's t-shirts as well. So I want you to turn and talk. Pick somebody who's close to you, somebody nearby. I'm going to be annoying, and if I see somebody not talking, I'm going to come talk to you, and I know you don't want that. So turn and talk. What do you hope to take away from today? There's a reason you're here. I want you to just express that to somebody else. All right, with me in 5, with me in 4, with me in 3, with me in 2, with me in 1. Wow, you are all so much better than sixth graders. Usually I have to walk around the room and force people to talk. That was awesome. I hope you heard some things from other people that, kind of inspiring to you. I hope that also helped frame what we're doing here today for you in your own mind of you having a goal for something that you take away from this. There's a few things that you can do if you're looking to create art for your music. As Liz mentioned, you can hire somebody else and it would be less work for you. It might be a little bit more money, but it might be cheaper than you think. But it's a good move to do because it can connect you to the community, right? In our music community, there's a lot of artists. And by hiring somebody, you are now connected to another possible musician or an artist within the community who may help spread your band name around or may help connect you to other artists that are similar that may make sense to play shows with. It keeps money in our community as well, right? Rather than hiring outside or using AI. This is the live record that Miracle Blood just put out a week ago, and we actually hired somebody else to create that image that you see there. Hiring people is always an option if you find that you're having a tough time creating your art, or if it's not just at the point that you want to put it out there yet. Liz went through a really, really detailed list of what you can do, but just the shorthand is find art you like, find out who created it, right? If there's another band, you're like, they always have cool art. I wonder who did theirs, similar aesthetic. You can reach out to that band and just say, hey, who creates your art? Reach out, give an idea of what you're looking for, ask if they would be interested about cost, timeline, etc. The other is to just make your own art. You don't have to pay anyone. It's a skill you will use over and over again. You have complete control over how it comes out. If you hire somebody else, you don't always have that control. I can be a bit over controlling, I think, which is why I end up making so much of the art for my band. And I promise you that you are able to do it. If you're here today, you're already a step ahead of the game of being, thinking about how do I do this? So how do you make your own art? I always, for just convenience sake, use digital things. So I use Photoshop. That's awesome news that Liz shared that, was it Affinity is completely free. I've talked to some other people who do their own art. They've said that GIMP is one that they use. Canva is really, really straightforward and easy to use. There's maybe less things that you can do with it, but you can certainly put things together for a flyer in Canva. I use a lot of royalty-free image sites like Pixels, Unsplash, Raw Pixel. You can get basically free photos that don't have copyright. You won't get in trouble for using them, and you can use them to manipulate them into art. If you already have photos of your musical act, those always work well for flyers, especially if you're the headlining act, where you don't have to come up with some clever art idea. You can just slap a photo of yourself on a flyer, and then people understand, oh, that's who's playing. I might be interested in going to see them. You can get so many different free fonts online. And then one trick that I use to mock up t-shirts is use Printify to make sure everything fits correctly on the shirt. You can also just print one or two, have it sent to your house to see, like, does this actually work? Does it look good on a shirt, or should I not get 100 of these printed? So making your own art, a few things that I've learned from doing this myself, that you just always want to make sure that you do so that you don't end up having to go back and redo things. Always start with the CMYK color setting and your whatever you're using, Photoshop or Affinity or whatever it is. That way, when you go to print things out, the colors translate correctly. Just a lot of times the default is RGB, and that is specifically for on screens and with light, whereas this setting is for pigment and printing. Always start with a high resolution, so 300 dots per inch. If it's lower, it might come out like pixelated looking when you print. So always start. I have a template where these settings are already there, so that I don't ever forget to do it and then have to go back and redo things. It will save you pulling hair out of your head. Plan ahead for different formats and different locations. So this is a recent flyer that I did, and I size it so that I can crop it. So I always start with the square, and then I have that little border so that you can crop it to fit on a regular standard 8.5 by 11 sheet and a 11 by 17. I actually have been doing a lot of the legal size, which is like 14 by 8.5. That way you just have to resize things. You don't have to go back and reformat things. So a lot of this, I recommend just trying to make your life easier if you're doing this, so you don't have to go back, rework things. When you're creating your own art, I want you to think about what you're trying to communicate, both in terms of who your target audience is, what you think will catch their eye, and as well as kind of what Liz said, making sure all the important information is upfront and readable and is just easy to find by looking at it, right? So one thing that I started doing is putting the little descriptions of band genres underneath, just because people might see a flyer, and especially nowadays, things are so niche. People are into such niche little genres that this maybe without all the other stuff might catch somebody's eye, but then they're not 100% sure what music is this? Am I actually going to be interested? But this will help confirm, like, oh yeah, chaos music. That's totally my jam. Like, I'm going to go to that. Think about the aesthetics and tropes for you as an artist and your genre. Miracle Blood had this kind of, we've gone through a few different genres and different styles, and we had this time period where a lot of like pop punk and emo bands wanted to play with us for some reason, and we felt we like that style of music, but we felt like we were not going to go over well with those audiences because we're so much louder and heavier. So we made a conscious decision to start trying to make our aesthetics appear that way. So we started using a lot of skulls. It sounds really basic, but it 100% worked. Like skulls, oh, this must be a heavy band. It sounds dumb, but it really works. And I don't want you to be afraid of picking obvious things like that, because you will find a way to make it your own, right? For example, the skull thing, I used the same exact skull here and here on both album covers, mixed it with the ice cream cone, putting in the eyeballs in the skull to give it almost a cartoonish quality. It makes it its own thing. It's not just, oh, another skull. You'll find a way to make it your own. Let's see. As I said before, if you have, I always recommend hiring a good photographer, especially if you have a show that's at a venue that you feel like that's going to be a good show. It's a nice looking stage. The lighting is good there. There's going to be people out. You can always use those photographs for inside your album. You can use it for flyers. You can use it to post on social media, and they always work well. This was a picture that we had, and I did really not a lot of processing to it and put it up on the flyer, and it worked well. So we'll do another turn and talk. So I want you to think about, who is your target audience? What are the people who you want to have come to your shows, whose interest you want to get? What are they into? What types of aesthetics would catch their eye? What types of aesthetics or tropes could you imagine using? Just don't say skull, because we already claimed skull. Nobody else can use skull, all right? But turn and talk to somebody. What are you thinking at this point? All right. With me in 5, with me in 4, with me in 3, with me in 2, with me in 1. I just want to see, raise your hand if you now have some kind of idea of an aesthetic that you want to pursue for your project. Yeah, a little bit. All right. So I'm hoping that you're developing ideas as we do this, and that you come away with at least stuff that you want to try. And I was talking to Mateo in the back, and, we were talking about, is it all right if I use this as an example? All right. So he said, my band is kind of like shoegaze meets heavy synth stuff, right? And I think that's awesome. You can think about, how do you combine aesthetics from both those things to signal to your people, like, this is something that might be for you. And I kind of touched upon this with the skull thing, but don't be afraid to pick obvious things. And don't be afraid to lean into established aesthetics, especially if you're first coming up and people aren't familiar with the name, because people who just like a certain genre will know if you use kind of well-established tropes that this is going to be for them. So don't be afraid to just lean into that, especially early on. And like I said, as you do it more and more, you'll develop your own kind of style, your own brand, your own take on those tropes. So now that you have your design, now what do? This is an area where I'll see there's a lot of things that you can do nowadays. It's endless. But I find that people rely on the same ones over and over again. First off, I think it's coming back, but for a while I was noticing that printing was just becoming less and less of a thing. I do think it's underutilized, and that it can really make a difference to print and post your flyers up. I'll go around, I'll always see the Summer Gloom stuff up where I'm posting too. So good job, Steve. So think about the venue. The venue always needs one. People who are going to the venue that you're playing at are likely to go to the venue to see you. Think about where are the people who listen to your type of music? Where are they hanging out around town? Where are they going in terms of establishments? I always put some up at our practice space because I know there are other band people there. Mr. Music in Alston, right? Music shops, record stores. If there's like a cafe or a bar where you're like, that's where the synth shoegaze people hang out every day, make sure you hit up that spot. I recommend posting to socials. I agree that we're in a weird spot with it right now. It is unfortunately still where so many people are just glued to their screen. So if you want to get something in front of people's faces, it's a good place to do it. I recommend that you do have to do it multiple times in different ways. Don't just post the same flyer over and over again. If you got those good photographs from your last show, pepper in the flyers with the photographs. Just like an algorithm thing that's annoying and dumb is that a picture of you is going to do a lot better and be seen by more people than the flyer. So if you put a picture of you first before the flyer, it tends to do a lot better. I also am a big fan of Bands in Town and Songkick. The people who go to shows are on those apps. I'm on those apps all the time. If I'm bored, I look at what's going on Bands in Town. And what I love about Bands in Town is you can actually put the flyer for the actual show on there. A lot of these are integrated with different things. Bands in Town is now integrated with YouTube. So if you have videos up and somebody's watching your video, it will now, because of Bands in Town, populate the shows that are near them right on your video, which is pretty awesome. Songkick has for a long time been integrated with Spotify and a few other apps as well. Facebook groups, there's actually a lot in this area, Boston and New England. Reddit communities, this is one where I've been doing lately, and people are like, whoa, a flyer in a Reddit? And I'm like, yeah, man, why the heck not? And it actually, like, people will comment and be like, oh, cool, I'm gonna go to this. So that's one I recommend. You can find, like, especially for out of town places, I've used it. Like, there's actually a Boston punk Reddit and a Boston music community Reddit. If you're playing in Medford or Worcester, you can go see. I always recommend reading the rules of each community before you go and post, but see if it makes sense to post in there. You'd be surprised the kinds of the response you can get on Reddit communities. Discords. Think about where else people might be who are interested. I'm going backwards. Here we go. Okay, so turn and talk. What is one takeaway you have from this session? This is going to just be the wrap up. I want you to think about, you had a goal at the beginning. Are you any closer to that? What's one takeaway? And also, I do have a lot of these printouts which have kind of some of the stuff from these slides, but also a little bit more specifics on formatting and different settings you can put into Photoshop. So I'm just going to pass this around, and you can take one or just keep on passing. But as that's happening, why don't you turn and talk? One takeaway, if anything, what's one takeaway you have from this session? All right, I just wanted to say thank you so much, everybody. I hope there is something that you took away from the presentation. If you have this sheet, you also have my contact. Feel free to reach out if you want any advice, if you're interested in hiring me, or just any clarification on doing any of this stuff. But like I said, you can do this. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Andrew. That was amazing. Up next, we've got we've got Jeff Takai. Jeff Takai has been in bands you've never heard of, Big Digits, Plunge Into Death, written children's books you've never read, Cat Secrets, Hip Hop in the House, and made puppet music videos you've never seen. Barack Obama lived in Somerville, gentrify it. Lately, he's been making a weekly comic about two cats who find a pair of glasses and cause the end of civilization. Thought leaders. All right, welcome, Jeff.
Hi, everybody.
We're all set. Yeah, we got it. Thank you.
So yeah, my name's Jeff Takai. I'm gonna use this overhead projector. Yeah. That might catch on fire. It starts to smoke after a while, but that might just be dust. So yeah, my name is Jeff Takai. I'm a musician. I make children's books. Here's some of my children's books. You can get them at this library. And Liz and Andrew said so many things that are awesome. I'm going to try not to repeat them. I'm going to start by saying, so every band that I've been in has pretty much been with friends. I've never like joined a band or like put up a sign like drummer wanted or whatever. So keep that in mind with my advice. Is like I've never been in a band that's made any money.
Unlike all of us.
Yeah, I was gonna say. I think if you're here, so if you're here, this is you. You have a soul, and you're attending a Skillshare on a Saturday morning at 11. And that's the enemy. They're the ones who have. So that's not even like, I'm not even talking about like national bands, but there are like local bands with people who have lots of money to like hire PR firms and like pay for social media ads or whatever they do. But we're those people. So we can't really compete with like, I don't know. I've a couple times I paid for like Facebook ads and it just seemed like a real scam. That's all I gotta say. So what Liz and Andrew both talked about, I think is kind of the same thing as this, is like a better strategy is like just have like little things that add up. So I'm gonna talk about like posters and stuff mostly, but there's great college radio that I think Liz talked about. And the college radio, they have, not only they play local music, but a lot of the stations have concert reports where they'll read all the shows in town. So your band's name will be announced several times a day. Then there's whatever internet thing. And then like your friend might invite you to the show. And then if you've seen a poster and heard the name, it all might add up. And so you never know what's gonna make people go to shows, I guess, or listen to your music. My sort of big thesis statement is that people like physical objects, records, stickers, scarves, and pizza. I think that, I mean, once again, if you're here, you probably agree with this. You like records, you like vinyl, cassettes are cool. Flyers, Emily is very good at handing out flyers. And I think that this is an awesome example. Like, you know, you just have a thing, like, you know, like cut a piece of paper in 4 and you have your information and you just have them in your pocket and you just give them to friends. And a lot of times they'll just throw them out. But once again, there's some connection that's been briefly made. It's like easy. Giving someone a flyer, I think, makes more of an impression than just like someone seeing the same image if they're scrolling. It's going to stick with you a little bit. You can make stickers. I made these stickers with my puppets. I don't know if anyone wants a sticker with puppets. I have those too. So I'm going to really skip over poster design because both Liz and Andrew went really deep into it. And I think what I'm saying is very similar. Liz was definitely talking about having like a focal image. I like to try to incorporate the text, all the information into the image. And then this is a bad example. There's too much info. I think Liz also talked about like having the fonts be different sizes and grouping them in different ways. So I don't know, these are some of my posters. Once again, I don't have. The other cool thing is you don't have to make them the same size. Like here's a really tall, skinny one. Here's a different size one. So I'm gonna do a brief thing on silk screening at some point. This one was printed out. That's one of my puppets. This one is like a little comic thing. If anyone wants to see any of these afterwards, please, I'll just leave them all out here. Where'd my presentation go? Okay. Oh, one thing that I want to say that's a little bit opposite of what I think Liz and Andrew were saying was like, sometimes I think it's good to like go against genre. And I think that, I found this online, I think it's like legit. I think it's real. So Cannibal Corpse is like a death metal band from like Florida. And I think this is actual merch from them. And so I think that kind of will catch people's eye more than if it was like in, the dripping blood font or whatever Cannibal Corpse's font is. All right. Now I'm going to just talk briefly about ways of making these things, or just sort of any physical object. And these are all kind of punk rock, DIY. I should say, yeah, these guys also emphasize how you can do it yourself. If you're afraid of drawing, I recommend Linda Barry. I don't know if you know her. So Linda Barry is an awesome cartoonist, and she's made a few books. I think that maybe there's one more of like about getting in touch with like drawing, and like not in a cheesy new agey way, but her kind of whole premise is like kids just draw and they don't think about it, and kids' drawings are awesome. And then that something happens when you become like a teenager, you become super self-conscious. And then when you're an adult, you're afraid of drawing good or drawing correctly. And her thing's all just about different, like, there's different fun ways of just drawing cool things. And my point is you can make an image that would look cool on a poster. So you have an awesome poster, whatever. One way to print it is at the public library. So the Somerville Library has a certain amount of free printing every day. I think it's $3 worth. They have a really nice color printer. So if you live near the library, I've done this. You just go to the library each day for 3 days and you get like 30 nice posters. That's what it's here for. You can, and I forget how many black and white posters you can do, but you can do more. Another thing I should say is like, you can incorporate like this art making process as part of being in your band. Like after band practice, you guys can just go hang out in a bar and like color flyers or make zines, staple things, put things together. I know Zuzu for a long time ago, Zuzu had a dance night where they would, every week, they would have a flyer and then people would just color them with crayons or markers, like workers or just people visiting the bar. Another option is to just buy a cheap printer. You can buy an inkjet printer for like a color inkjet printer for like $100. And you can, once you have a printer, you can print your own flyers, and you can print like hundreds and hundreds of flyers with each like ink cartridge or whatever. You can also, they sell paper that like makes iron-ons, so you can print out iron-ons and make t-shirts. They're not going to be like the best quality, but if we're DIY punk, we don't care. You can print out stickers. You can print out, they sell like shrinky dink paper, so you can print stuff out, bake it into little shrinky dinks. Another way of making stuff is to partake in available resources. Maybe you have an office job, and maybe your office has like a nice color printer, and maybe you know when your boss takes lunch or whatever. You can, or maybe your friend has a nice Xerox machine at their office. Feel free, I'm not responsible if you get fired, but definitely take advantage of your job. Now I'm going to quickly talk about how to silkscreen. Now this is like it's a tragic, you're going to mess up a million times, but it's something I encourage everybody to do because it like allows you to make awesome things that don't cost much. You have to buy some like setup stuff, but then once you get going, you can print a lot of posters on anything. You can print on newspaper if you want. You can print on whatever paper you can find. And then you can sell these. You can give them away. People love to be given something that looks like this. You can even bring the screen on tour if you're going on tour and make like t-shirts on the road, which is a messy process, but it's possible, I promise. So the basics idea of silk screening, I mean, I think a lot of you probably know, but you coat a screen with photo emulsion, you expose it to light. Oh, you have your design on here on a transparency. You expose it to light, you spray water on it, and then where there was black covering the screen, the stuff will shoot out. And then where the light was exposed, it gets baked and becomes like this. This is an old screen for a band I was in called Big Digits. I think it was for t-shirts. It's like t-shirt size. But so once again, we burnt this screen. We can make shirts as we need to, clean it out, and then put it away. And then if we need to do it again, we already have this thing. So let me go a little bit more into detail. You can buy silk screening supplies, I think at like Michael's or whatever. You definitely buy them at like Dick Blick or online. So you get a screen. And once again, I encourage everybody to do this. It's pretty fun. The one thing you need, the tricky thing you need is you kind of need a good water source. Like a garden hose works really well, but I'll explain that part in a second. So you have a screen. The cool thing is you can reuse them. So in this one, you can kind of see, I think I use this screen for this poster. You can kind of see the pattern briefly. You coat this screen with emulsion. I guess this is the emulsion. You get a nice thin coat of this purple stuff. Then you have to put it in the dark and let it dry. And then when it's drying, once it's dry and you're ready to go, you get a special kind of light bulb. It's like a full frequency light bulb. Once again, there's tons of YouTube videos you could watch about this. So I'm not going to go into like the specifics. And the basic idea of silk screening is, where's this poster? I'll just show you. So this is a poster I made for Porch Fest for a couple years ago. So you can see it's a 2-color poster. It's like kind of pink and brownish. So first I would print pink, like so. Then so the paper would just have pink on it. Then I would let it dry and then bring out the other screen, which is the brown. And then you line it up exactly, which is kind of tricky to do. And then it overlays like that. It's hard to do on the overhead. And once again, the cool thing about silkscreen is even if it messes up, it looks kind of cool. Looks more punk rock, as we like to say. Like this one, you can see that the registration is off, but it kind of just makes it look cooler, I think. Anyway, so you have I'll explain once again. For this pink transparency, this is what it would look like. It's just black. Once again, you print this out on your own printer. They make transparencies you can put through a photocopy machine too. You have your coated screen. You put this on here, and then you expose it to light. And then this is where kind of the trauma can come in, because you have to figure out the distance from the screen, and it depends what kind of light bulb you have. But because if you do too much, it'll won't squirt out. And if you do too little, the whole screen will just go blah, and then you have to recoat it and wait again. So that's where the tragedy happens. But anyway, you do it perfectly, the light shines in, and it makes a screen that looks like this. Then, all you do, this is kind of the fun part. Once that works, you're kind of in the clear. Then you set up your screen. So you can attach this to a table. I just do this. If you have you could do this in your practice space, definitely. The one thing you really need is that water source to shoot out the stuff. And this is kind of messy. These little hinge things hold the screen in place, like so. Another thing you'll have to do is, if you're doing more than one color, I should say you can do one color screens. Let me see if I have any. Oh yeah. Oh, this is for Emily's band as well. It's a very old poster for the operators. One color looks cool in punk rock. But two colors definitely kind of makes things like jump out more. But one color is totally acceptable. But if you're doing two color, you have to align it. And so that's easy enough. I usually just put like a little piece of cardboard here and here. So when you're slipping in the paper, it's like landing in the same place. So you do what the pink dog does. You put ink on it. I always use like water-based textile ink. I found works perfectly well, and it's like less toxic. And it looks just as good, I think. You put the ink on, you kind of let this fall onto the paper, and then you force the ink through, and that makes the first color. They sell like fancy like print drying racks. I just throw the stuff on the floor while it dries, or I've like hung up little like clothespins. You can get really fancy with this, but you don't have to be fancy. Then once that's dry, you would take this screen out, put your line art screen in. You would do the same thing. This is the part where you have to line it up perfectly, like that, and then you have a perfect poster. And like I said, there's a lot of trial and error. You can silkscreen on t-shirts once again. You can silkscreen on like whatever fabric you want. You can make stickers. The cool thing is you can silkscreen on anything. Anything you can like jam under here. And then you give them away. These guys talked about great ways to hang them up and give them to people and promote them. I would use the same image on any sort of social media. I was talking to these two about how terrible social media is and how I'm very bad at it. But you kind of should think about, I guess, the format and the size. Where's my little poster? Like for this thing that I did recently, I sort of made this like little comic. It was an event about authors sharing works in progress. It was called Might Delete Later. And so I made it kind of like a little comic where there's a cat that says, "This is brilliant." And then it looks at his computer and says, "Alas, I am doomed." But I did this way so this could be reformatted again and again. It's like squares, so you can have them vertically to be whatever Facebook, whatever thing is, or horizontally or square. And then, last thing I should say, sorry I made such a mess. The most important thing I think that we would all agree on is like, don't forget that you are an artist. And that you're making music, you're already an artist, so you can do all this other stuff. Music might be your primary thing, but there's no reason you can't draw a picture and use that to get people to come to your shows. And I guess that's all.
All right, thank you so much, Jeff. That was truly amazing. I love the overheads. Okay, so we're gonna move into a little bit of Q&A. I'm hoping that your minds are jogged and you might have some questions about like process or any of those things from our panelists. So we're going to bring them all up here and okay, does anybody have any questions for our panelists? Process or otherwise?
I do. Did you all know each other before today? All three of you?
I knew Liz. I don't think I've ever met her.
I also knew Liz.
Liz is nice to meet you too. It was awesome.
Okay, thanks.
Jerry, do you have one?
Yeah. You guys touched a little bit on electronic press kits. Can you talk a little bit about like the difference between doing that versus like the other types of media that you work on? Like I attempted one and it was very much like a sad high school project. I want to learn more about how to make it visually appealing.
Sure. I can talk a little bit about that. So it will always feel like making a sad high school project. One piece of advice that I got was, figure out where your strengths are at. So somebody told me, you guys have some really cool videos. You should make a sizzle reel and put that at the top of your EPK. So think about, like, do you have cool videos? Do you want your music to be at the top? Do you want your live photos to be at the top? Think about your accomplishments. Think about linking as many like articles that you have about your music, just to highlight, because you think about the purpose of your EPK is really for like industry people to understand who is this musical artist, what have they done, why do other people care about them, why should I care about them. So I would just think about like, what do we already have, what have we already done that we want to highlight, and then how do we present that in a way that really shows it to somebody else.
Can I just a follow up to that?
Sure.
What about if you were getting something off the ground and nobody cares about you? You have no press yet, but you need in this day and age, like you want to book a show and you have no, you're starting at the bottom, right?
Yeah,
how would you start?
I mean, I think the first thing that Liz talked about is like going to shows of like bands, like local bands you like, and talking to them. Like that's how I would always get shows being in a new band, just like find people that seem to have the same aesthetic that you'd want to hang out with.
Sure, I guess how that transfers into the digital realm is my question, because that's the part I do know.
Yeah.
And then I'm not there yet, so where's that bridge is the question.
What I've always done was like in the band email signature, I put all the links to YouTube, Spotify, Instagram, whatever. And a lot of it came from like reaching out to people like bookers and being like, hey, this is us, like this is what we do, this is what we sound like for fans of, here's our Bandcamp, here's this, and just sort of like professionally presenting everything. And then the EPK can come later, like maybe once you're a little more established. Yeah, I don't know, especially local shows, I feel like people aren't really looking for the EPK. If you're like promoting a release, it can be useful, but I think if you're just looking for like local show opportunities or like to get on a festival or something, like if you just show the media that you have, it can be helpful.
And there's also like local media like bostonhassle.com who review local music, so it's worth just getting your music to those people, because then you'll have a clip of something to put in your stuff.
Awesome.
Yeah, and I think, it's already been said, but like your first shows are going to be through the community that you make here, right? But then those are also opportunities for you to, right? If you have a show, that's an opportunity for you to hire a photographer, get, quality like photographs of you guys to put on a website or Instagram or EPK. I mean, I think EPK, it does come later on. Like we didn't even build one until we were like shopping labels for our second record, really. Right. So yeah.
Awesome. Thank you.
I have some questions. So Liz, I noticed when I went to Summer Gloom, the projections, you did those projections, they were really cool. And that's something I'm definitely noticing a lot more at shows. But I, as an artist, have no way of, I don't know how people make those. So can you just talk a little bit about that?
Oh, that would be a great question for the Summer Gloom team, like Erin Jeanette, because I did all the branding and built the assets, but I think they actually spec'd it out for the projector itself. I wish I knew more about that, but with projection, I'm under the impression that you just need to kind of like spec it out for the resolution of a projector. Is that, I'm looking at Erin.
Yeah, Steve and I did it.
We
made it move this year, which is why he, instead of sleeping before the festival, was animating Liz's art. And then
it was effective.
It was very
really cool.
He was like, I want to make a move this year. And it's like, you don't have time. It's like, I'm going to do it. But last year when we didn't have someone who could actually animate the art, we used Liz's artwork and just put the band names over it. And that one, I just made in Google Slides and we hooked up to a projector. This year, since we wanted to animate it, we took all the band logos and put them on a looping animation. And we just looped it and A lot of venues have projectors already set up. You can just ask them before your show. A lot of bands have visuals that they bring in, and as long as you communicate with the venue and don't just show up with a flash drive, they're usually pretty down. And I think it's like I forget the actual. It's a typical Google slide or PowerPoint resolution.
Like
is what works.
1920 by 1080.
Yeah, like it's not even high res. It's just.
Yeah.
Oh, cool. Okay.
And I should say, iMovie, if you have access to a Mac, iMovie is like very powerful and it's pretty intuitive. You can just drag and drop clips and like edit them and put like text over it really easily.
So you could use that and then just make an iMovie file and put it on a flash drive and take to the venue, essentially?
I think you would communicate with the venue first, but yeah. Or
Deep Cuts has
Right.
it ready to go.
Yeah,
Crystal
yeah.
Ballroom, a lot of them, if you just tell them ahead of time and ask them what they need, they'll tell you
Yeah.
exactly. Sometimes they'll be like, just email this address. Sometimes bring in a flash drive.
because there's like a million formats to export as, and you can select it in iMovie, but it gets really finicky, but you can make something.
A lot of programs will have like a YouTube.
Yeah, exactly. You
Fitting,
choose
choose
the
that.
preset. Yeah.
I'm thinking, Andrew mentioned a website, pexels.com, for free stock images. They also have video.
Yep.
Yeah.
And there's another one, Pixabay. They also have.
What is it
stock images. The other one is Pixabay, like Pixabay, and Pexels, Pexels. Finds like video footage there if you just want to cut something together. Drone footage of nature is always good.
I have another question.
Archive.org, Internet Archive, has lots of like vintage stuff.
Which one is it?
Archive.org,
Okay.
old like 16 millimeter films and what have you.
Yeah, on my slideshow, I posted links to all these resources too. So if that's helpful to just like have it where you can click it, it's on there. Arkin
one more
had something.
suggestion just in this vein. A lot of times I'll have done something by hand or on my computer. I'll send it to my phone to run it through a bunch of apps, and like there's the same way there's like color filters for a photo, there's like animation, like put a glitchy texture on it or make it look like a
that's a great
old
idea.
print, like a damaged film negative or something, and just try some of that on it. I'll do it over a poster even, and then I have an animated version of the poster, or I could use it as a projection on stage.
That is a great idea. So like Instagram filters, and you could just download the file, right, instead of posting it. Love it.
And Pinterest, someone mentioned for mood boards, there's like a companion app called Shuffles that's for making little animations out of your collages.
Oh, that's cool. On the topic of video clips and moving animations, so part of marketing, Spotify says that if you release a single or an album with a canvas, short 10-second video clip it moves when you play the song, that can increase your engagement. So if you use a digital distro, like I use DistroKid, they actually have like a Spotify Canvas creator on DistroKid. I used Pexels. I found a video clip, downloaded it, used an app, added a filter. You can like use all these things synergistically to accomplish your goals.
That's what you call punk rock.
Exactly, yeah.
I have another question. I know budget is a concern for people, and some people, if they're just starting out or maybe they haven't worked with another artist a lot, they have no idea where the budget even starts. So I find it, it can be a little tricky when someone asks me, what's your budget? Because I have no idea how much this stuff might cost an artist to create, what's ethical, what's reasonable. So would any of you feel comfortable kind of discussing that?
I don't know.
I guess I could chime in a little bit. Well, I mean, I have a hard time pricing my work, and especially if it's like for friends, bands. None of us have any money. And so sometimes what I'll do, if I do say like, okay, what's your budget? And they're like $100 for an album cover, then I can like adjust my practice and be like, okay, well, I'm not going to do like a hand illustration that takes me 25 hours. I'll just try to come up with something that looks great, but is like sustainable for all parties and everybody's happy. And then otherwise I think, yeah, just trying to find something that works for you and is sustainable for like everyone involved.
I think I do try to think of like time and like if I was paying myself an hourly rate, what would be fair to me? And I should say, like, I don't have to say this to anyone in this room, but you should always pay people that you're asking to do. Like, obviously, this crowd doesn't need to be told that, but you shouldn't ask people to do stuff for free.
Jez, your question is about what should people expect their budget should be, or what's a reasonable thing
kind
to?
of all of it. I know it feels like a little bit of a third rail, but it's sometimes like I have no idea because I know how much it costs to make a record, like go in the studio and do all that stuff. But when it comes to creating the artwork, I just don't even have an idea of scale a lot of the time. So kind of knowing if I'm approaching an artist, I don't want to lowball them, but just even knowing where to start that conversation.
I mean, I think a good thing to keep in mind is that nobody's really making tons of money off of any of this stuff, and the people who are involved in the community are really involved because they love it and because we're all doing it for the love of it, right? So keep that in mind, that people can be really flexible with their pricing. People can be flexible with the amount of time or effort they put in, and also think about what are ways that you can do things to try to move around costs, whether it's partaking or whatever you said, or using websites where you don't have to pay, like Pexels. I've made full music videos for free just by using like footage we already had of the band and Pexels, like, and cutting things together. You could use an iMovie, which you already have if you already have a Mac. So I would just think about how do you get creative, and then what are the areas that you really don't want to skimp and you don't already have those skills, right? If you're like, I can't do video on my own, that's the area, but I can do flyers. So maybe you decide, okay, we don't have to put as much money into visual flyer design, but we're going to put it all into video. So think about where can you get around costs and where are you going to really need to pay for something and have it be a certain quality.
JJ?
Yeah, I just wanted to also throw in that barter is a really great resource. Yeah. And I barter a lot because you touched on this. Honestly, if somebody comes to you with a $100 budget, it's not going to make or break your finances for the rest of the year. And my favorite barters are things like hairdressing, like things that are really, really super expensive if you have to pay for them. But if somebody can cut your hair and you're saving $100 on a haircut, and you can do, like you're saying, like not something that's going to spend the rest of your life making it for them, but something that's worth a little bit. I feel like there's a lot of opportunities there. Everybody's got something. Steal from work. Everybody's got like, I don't work in a place with a printer, but somebody else might.
Right, exactly.
I feel like there's always something.
I actually did barter for my last album cover. I did barter something, so. But I'm just not always sure, if that feels fair for the other person, because I feel like people might not always speak up about those sorts of things, so trying to navigate those issues.
I think, just having a conversation, because the people you want to work with are going to be willing to talk to you about that, I think. Like, if they're like, I'm going to charge you $2,000 without asking you any questions, you probably don't want to work with them anyway.
Any other questions?
Well, and I don't know, Liz, maybe you can talk a little bit about, you talked a little bit about practices for reaching out, but like there's also just practices for respecting what you're asking for, that like maybe just how to think about that ask of an artist, and like what to say, what not to say, that makes people feel like, okay, like you're meeting me with respect, even if you don't have a lot of money, like.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely. I think like one thing you can think about is, all right, if I were making this, like how much would I want to be paid per hour, like for this thing? And you can have that conversation. Like sometimes I'll even say like, okay, this project will probably take me like 6 hours. So then I do this hourly rate, and you can break it down that way. And then just being mindful of a lot of extra asks and edits and things like that. Like some designers have contracts and they require 50% deposit up front and then 50% upon completion because they've been stiffed by clients a lot. So, and then some designers will say like, you'll get 3 sketches, 2 edits, and these files, and any more edits or any more back and forth will cost extra, because when you get into the thick of it, you know, sometimes people have new ideas or they want to take it in a completely different direction, and that's extra time and extra labor, and you always just want to be mindful of like this is creative labor and that is valuable, and you always want to be respectful and show that you are willing to pay for that extra labor. So yeah, I think always offering, and even if the artist is like, no, whatever, I'll throw this in for free, you know, that's one thing, but always offering, I think, is really helpful. Like being like, I know you really went above and beyond, you did all these extra edits, you had to reformat this and that, like here's an extra couple $100 or something, you know. I think it always shows good character to like say that you're considering those things.
And I also think that like, if as an illustrator, if somebody in the community or somebody like that you know or like asks you to do stuff, you're going to be much more flexible than if some corporate company asked me to do an illustration. Like I'm just going to charge them a lot more straight up, because once again, sort of just you got to take advantage of who you can take advantage of. Who aren't in your community, I guess.
So something that you mentioned earlier on your slides is just kind of the AI slopification of like social media, and like there's only a certain amount of hours in a day as like just a musician of like working and creating songs, but also like promoting. I don't want to overextend myself into social media, especially if, at least for us as artists, it feels like it might be like a dying medium. But at least like promotion, like what other ways, like local ways outside of coming to like a forum at a public library or going to shows is there to kind of meet and network with people?
It's a good question.
Yeah, good question.
Yeah, I mean, I know it's been said a million times, but just really going to shows, talking to people, meeting them, staying for the whole show. I think that's the base level of like, it's a community based thing. And I know also with social media, it kind of feels like you're like, oh, they're just putting it out to the internet. But I think it's important to remember that like, even with social media, you're really trying to reach your community still. It's just that's where we're at with society. So many people are on it all the time. But just thinking about, who are your people that you're trying to reach? Where do you think you can find them? How do you genuinely connect with them? Because even on social media, like there are ways to use it where it's like you can be direct messaging people. If somebody shows interest in your music, there's no reason why it just has to be you posting videos of you talking to the ether or whatever, right? There's real I think people forget there's real people behind every account on social media. And if it's somebody who's showing interest in your music, it's somebody who's worth, maybe checking in with and sending a direct message and saying, hey, thanks for following, sometimes I'll ask like, where are you in the country? We tour, maybe we'll be coming through. And then we've had people come through to see us on tour because of things like that.
Cool.
Yeah, to add to that, I would say use social media in a focused way where you're not just like throwing spaghetti at the wall. Like what I found to be really helpful in finding community was just even like looking up like shoegaze bands in this town or whatever, and then reach out. You could DM somebody or send them an email and be like, I really like what you're doing, like we're touring. Or if it's a local Boston band, just be like, when's your next show? Like I would love to come out. Just like reaching out to people and just showing support and appreciation, I can connect you. And then you can go to the show and then talk to them at the merch table and be like, hey, I'm Liz, I emailed you. I don't know if that's too direct or whatever, but I've met a lot of people that way. And especially as a musician, it's like, oh, I play in this band and like we should be friends. You feel it out. I can.
I have one more suggestion about that, just to get out of local too. Like if you feel like you're already doing it locally, like I feel like virtual workshops can be really good, or a virtual fan community, like somewhere where you want to be there anyway for your music. Like you do a band retreat or you do a music meditation with other people of similar tastes. Like just being on those message boards seems really fruitful to me, and like meeting people all over the world who have similar taste or were drawn to the same songwriting workshop or something.
Oh yeah, that reminds me, maybe like a Bandcamp listening party would be cool if you have an upcoming release. That's a new thing that they've been doing, where there's like a chat feature and you could listen to your album together and like people can connect with you that way. Or there's something else maybe, like if you have, I know during like the pandemic when there were a lot of live streams happening on YouTube, there was like the chat feature, and like C did one where we were like tuned in and people were like, oh my God, that riff, you know, and we could like talk to them in real time. So that was also fun.
All right, so thank you so much again. And before we wrap up, Amy from Art Stays Here has a few comments.
Thanks, Asha. Hi, everybody. I'm Amy. I'm with Art Stays Here. If you don't know what Art Stays Here is, there's a sheet over here, but we basically are an all-volunteer nonprofit that helps save artist studio buildings and music rehearsal buildings. You might know about us. If you don't, please take a thing and sign up. Thank you guys for being here, and thanks to the library, and thanks to the Arts Council, and to Ajda. I just have a couple of questions. How did you learn about today? And I guess we could do did you learn through the Arts Council? Did you learn through Ajda? Did you learn through social media? And if we could just do a show of hands. So I'll first start with the Arts Council. Great. Ajda? Regular socials? Aha. Great. Anyone else find out about this in some other way? A flyer?
What about the artists?
Oh, or from these guys?
Yeah.
Oh, so from these guys? Great. Other ways?
I think, did Art Stays Here post about it or send out an
We
email
did.
blast? I think that's how I heard about it.
Okay. Other ways? Great. So go ahead.
Oh, I just went to another creative network event, and I mentioned that I make music and design, and then someone was like, you should go to this. So.
Oh, great. Okay, good. Did anyone see physical flyers out in the world? Great.
I mean, I knew about it, but I was like, oh, look at that.
All right,
Where did you see it?
great, thank you.
Like,
next question. Where do you rehearse? If you have a rehearsal space, and I'll just take hands.
Malden?
At some?
Yep.
Studio 52.
Great. 52?
Sound Museum, Brighton.
Hitchburn?
Yeah.
Okay,
Milcross Studios near Market Basket.
thanks.
52 and also my friend's basement.
And Friend's Basement, great. Anyone, go ahead.
Some in Malden and the band member's house.
Okay. Anyone at 55 Morrissey in Dorchester?
Occasionally.
Okay. Anyone anywhere else that we mentioned?
The Record Co.
Oh, the Record Co.
Occasionally
Yeah.
the record company, but like we've lost all our rehearsal studio. And since like, you know, the drummer has his own drum room, he can't pay for like another you know.
Okay. Anyone
so
here?
we're
At
literally going to Worcester sometimes too.
Right. Space is sparse. Anyone at Charlestown? Paul?
Yeah.
Steve?
Currently.
Charlestown Rehearsal Studios? Okay, great. And any other places? Great. And I wanted to just ask, if we did this again in a couple of months, not necessarily artwork related to music, but another workshop-y, what did you call it, a skill share? That's the word is new to me. It sounded to me like people have a need for marketing. That's what it sounded like. But anyone want to throw out other ideas, like video? Photography,
How to book shows.
how to book shows, the typical stuff. Great. Say it again?
Ticketing?
Ticketing.
Maybe that's part of marketing. And press releases.
Press releases, so press and marketing. Okay. Great. I also just want to say, not just thanks to you guys, but you each had 3 different presentations, which was pretty amazing. And some of the things were the same throughout, not in repetition, but in terms of like best practices. So it, for these guys, I feel like that's great to see, like, oh, all 3 of these guys say do this, this, and this. And I guess just want to say thanks for coming out on your Saturday. Is Saturday at 11 an okay time to do this?
Mm-hmm.
Anyone have a different time that makes more sense? All right, so we'll do it again here on another topic.
Cool.
Great, thanks you guys.
And then lastly, I just want to remind you on your way out, check out the QR code for the music resources page. Okay? Thank you so much for attending. Have a great day.
Thank
and have
you.
some snacks too.